back. I'm still Arnold from Goblin Punch.
And I'm still Nick L.S. Whelan from Papers and Pencils.
We've managed to trick ourselves into doing another episode. I don't know how.
We're very egotistical is how.
I am egotistical. I think I could be a success at anything, including podcasts.
Like, I'm the fucking best, and everyone wants to sit around and listen to me talk about bullshit that I barely understand. So that's why I'm doing a podcast.
So I interrupted us to start recording, but about 2 minutes ago we were talking about the idea, like, do dungeons need to be made do they need to be introductory dungeons? Is there such an advantage to making a dungeon an expert level dungeon for experienced players only? Or can you sort of merge those two things into one?
I mean, what I had said was that I don't think it's maybe the best publishing strategy, but that it's not illegitimate. I think that there's a space for dungeons that assume players have a good amount of knowledge about the game. But I mean, I was just writing a dungeon earlier today that I guess I feel like most of the best dungeons can work for any level, really.
I'm going to take a strong stance here and agree with you forcefully. I think all dungeons can do both, and because I'm a firm believer in the idea of differential success in a dungeon. You know, if you are low level, maybe don't fight the dragon. If you're high level, fight the dragon, take its stuff, and that applies to problem solving too. You know, if you don't know how to solve a problem, puzzles should never be like specific checkpoints or gateways to the rest of the dungeon, because dungeons shouldn't have singular goals. There should be many ways to enjoy a dungeon. You know, if you're not good at puzzles but you're good at fighting, go fight some shit, take their treasure. And if you don't know how dungeons work, you can learn the introductory easy parts of it and hopefully be wise enough to skip the scary parts.
I will say that having run a couple games that have very high level characters with a ton of resources, I get the impulse to make something that is beyond what a normal character or what a low level character would be able to do. I've certainly crafted scenarios for my high level players where sitting where I am, I'm like, I legitimately cannot think of a single way to solve this, but they keep steamrolling everything, so I'm going to throw something at them that seems impossible and see what they come up with. And usually they've, like, again, high level experienced players figure out a way to make it work. So I get where it's coming from with that. When you have these like characters who have access to tons of spells and vast pools of hit points. Yeah.
You're bringing up spells. I mean, spells in high level magic. I mean, I try pretty hard in my games to never give anyone flight, never give anyone dark vision, or very rarely, never give anybody teleportation, limit clairvoyance pretty tightly just so that they are forced. They can't circumvent the dungeon the way it's meant to be played. I don't give them water breathing. So water is always threatening. I don't give them free light sources. Torches always go out when you go underwater, you know, and that lets the dungeon stay at the same difficulty, sort of. Your level doesn't make those mechanical, simple, organic challenges any less challenging, because if you do go through an underwater tunnel, you might still drown, and you're going to come out on the far side without any light, who knows where. So, I don't know, but it sounds like you give, well, actually most people are happy to give their players things like teleportation and oftentimes dark vision from level 1, water breathing from level 1.
I mean, you describe what sounds like a really fun and interesting way to play that I'd be super interested in. As a referee, I actually have not used any standard spell lists for years now. I generally treat casting classes as an opportunity for the players to be very creative about what they think magic is, and then I try to adjudicate that and put limitations on what their imagination says magic is. Yeah.
Okay, I like that.
I have found that players, when given that kind of free reign, don't often solve simple, stupid problems. Like players, when you say make up your own magic, so far none of them have created the light spell.
I don't know. I had a wizard who had disintegrate, and he would just disintegrate holes in my dungeons and rest and come back the next day and disintegrate more holes. And They got chewed up pretty fast. It was like owning a Rottweiler who just chews on your shoes.
Now I do fight that quite a bit. I make it very difficult to go rest using any means that I can figure out.
Oh, so there is a constraint you do in there to keep people
absolutely.
from just cheesing with disintegrate
No,
spells.
I
that's
try
one
and
thing.
keep like a firm limit on what people are able to, how many spells people are able to cast in a given session. There's consequences in my games to spending time away from whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish.
Would you ever give a player a magic item that just like opens any lock, usable whenever? Infinite
Probably
uses?
not, but I've certainly given players magic items that fall into that sort of general category, I think.
Yeah.
I don't think it's the best choice I make, but I do tend to give players a lot of magic items and weird devices that do something, and it does it at will, whenever, as many times as they want.
Oh yeah, I mean, let them conjure rats, let them grow trees, let them turn two-dimensional, because those are all like lateral problem-solving tool sets. They don't circumvent a common and expected dungeon obstacle like locked doors or darkness.
I do try to avoid anything that does that.
Okay, so it sounds like we mostly still like each other at the end of this discussion.
Yeah. Anyway, we're almost 7 minutes into this, and we should probably run a dungeon. Yeah.
Yeah, fuck that. Let's get back in the dungeon. Okay, so I think we're going to pick up right where we left off. You're still kind of in the northwest corner. I'll get back into DM mode pretty quickly, but I think the idea is let's just play D&D in a rapid fashion for half an hour, or maybe a little bit more, and then we'll talk about it, what the dungeon design we noticed was after that for 30 minutes or less.
All right.
You know.
Now, do you think this should be our last venture into the... I forgot the I forgot the name
Quasqueton.
of this place. Quasqueton.
What was the name of your thief? Like Murgle?
Sparaga.
Oh yeah, Zenpucci. Okay. Sparaga. Yeah, man, I like him. Okay, yeah. I want this to be our last foray into Quasqueton. I do want to move on. I have a lot of ideas that we could do fun things with. But yeah, let's just play.
All right. So, I have just finished exploring a few secret rooms, and I see from the map that we're now sharing that there is a door to the south. I want to run in there with all of my big group of people.
It's a long, low kitchen. In this kitchen, you hear, as you put your ear up against the door, you hear the banging of pots, the chattering of goblin voices, and the sound of something cooking.
The sound of something cooking and goblin voices. That actually sounds much more interesting than I thought it would be.
What do you want to do?
I look around for goblins.
You can smell them from underneath the door. You can hear the sounds of their long toenails scratching on the floorboards. It smells like it smells like a cow's mouth.
All right. My whole party is just gonna barge into this room and ask what's cooking.
All right. So the goblin is just kind of. There's 7 of them in the room. They all notice you at the same time. One of them is hanging from the ceiling wearing a woman's dress. He can't get to you. He's still swinging his arms. His friends have tied him up there. But the remaining 6 are all picking up spoons and ladles and forks and knives. One of them is shouting, "Bree Yark!" And they're kind of like fanning out and shouting at you and saying things like, "You know, take our stew."
I wouldn't dream of taking your stew, goblins. I just,
Everyone's taking our stew.
honestly, more than your stew, I would like your recipe.
In the stew pot, you can see that there is what looks like a little bag of glass gems, and some pieces of wood chips, and some stone flakes, and what looks like puppy dog tails. The gems look valuable.
All right. Sparaga is going to be in the sort of like hiding behind Krago, and he's going to be glancing into the pot, writing down ingredients, and muttering, "Sparaga, Sparaga," as he goes.
All right, puppy dog tail stew is add it to your skill list.
Excellent. All right. If the goblins will let me, I will leave.
Oh, I rolled a reaction roll. These goblins just want to eat their disgusting stew in peace and continue making fun of their the one sad goblin who's stuck in the dress and tied to the wall.
I would love to stick around and help him, but
They invite you to spit on them before you leave.
I will be polite and spit on the goblin.
All right. They're impressed with your politeness. Lots of humans wouldn't do that.
Um,
All right. They let you leave.
all right, so I will continue along the corridor that goes parallel to this long, low room, and I would like to peek my head into the door that is right across the hallway.
I believe that's the dining room. In there you can see a couple long dining tables. There's a pile of chairs piled around the room, stacked against the walls. Against the back wall of the room, there's two enormous chairs, larger than the rest. One is engraved with a large Z, one is engraved with a large R. They're both formed from ornately carved walnut, formed from an enormous block of wood, which is actually built into the wall. They're actually fixed seats, but the two chairs are marred by a greenish fungus that just coats them like it boils. And I'll reveal that. And there is a second door, I think, off to the south, connecting to this room. There's no obvious inhabitants.
What color is the fungus on the chairs?
Green.
Green. All right. Does it look wet or dry?
Quite wet, quite moist. You can see the gills and the fungi kind of flexing in the air as you've opened the door and brought the breeze in.
Interesting. All right. I'm just, as a matter of course, going to sort of poke and prod at it with my 10-foot pole.
Alright, the soggy mushrooms break off and fall to the floor.
If this was not a traditional TSR dungeon published in the 70s, I would absolutely have one of my characters eat that, but I think it's basically guaranteed that would kill me. So I'm going to continue on through the dining room, down through the door to the south.
Alright, off in the south, you open the door. Just open the door and you find a small room. It's dominated by a carved statue of a nude human female, beckoning with arms out in front of her in a very alluring pose. The statue is apparently made of white marble, obviously of great value, many thousands, and the room is full of these long bench seats. There's also ale mugs hanging from the back wall, an ale keg beneath that, and in this room drinking ale are a quartet of gnomes who all appear to be touching the statue with some reverence.
Sporaga.
Gnome, gnome, gnome.
Is that the gnomish language?
Gnome, 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 gnome. They're like Pokemon, man.
Gotcha. So how do you want to handle this in this accelerated way of doing things? Should we check to see if any of my characters speak gnomish? I do have a dwarf.
Your dwarf definitely. He went there for summer school once. He studied abroad.
All right, so gnomes, I'm going to assume, are reasonably likely to be friendly to my various humanoid creatures and dwarfs. So Krago, taking the lead, being a dwarf and speaking the language, is going to ask, hey, what's going on in here?
The gnomes tell you they are. Gnome, we are here to worship this beautiful woman until she stops being stone, and then we're going to kiss her.
Krago, a little uncomfortable with these gnomes now. They seem like they don't respect this woman's autonomy an appropriate amount.
I heard a story where seven gnomes found a sleeping woman, and they kissed her, and she came back to life, and she married all of them.
Well,
we don't know much about gender roles in gnome society.
Yeah, no. All right, gnomes. So, do you guys, I don't know how long you've been here. Do you know anything about Rogan and Zelgar? Where'd they go?
They haven't been here. We went to a room, and there were some pools, and we drank one. And then that guy died. So, we left that room. Then we came here. Hey, I don't know who Rogan is. Are they pretty ladies? Oh, do you have any pretty clothes for our statue?
I do not.
Give us clothes.
I don't have pretty clothes, but you know what? If you go north and then take a swing to the west and go right across the hall into the opposite room, there are some goblins there who have some very pretty clothes.
Okay.
And that is faction play.
Yeah, you can see the gnomes already packing up their beer mugs.
I don't know who I dislike more: the goblins who are using a dress to shame one of their number, or the gnomes who seem to be like groping this woman who is trapped in like a stasis.
It might just be a statue. I mean, I hope it doesn't imply too much about me and my respect for women, but well, now it's in the podcast.
I mean, the fact that it like if it is a statue in matter of fact, I don't think that necessarily matters because the gnomes believe that it's a real woman.
Oh yeah, I think gnomes are gross. I mean, I imagine them having tiny brains underneath their hats, and like I don't know, just gross little raccoon hands.
All right, Arnold, prejudicial against gnomes.
I'm prejudiced against most things.
Honestly, most fantasy races are gross and should be depicted as gross. So I feel it. Aside from dwarves are gentlemen.
I'm okay with dwarves. They can hang out.
Yeah.
I would drink with them. Anyway, so this statue is very valuable. The gnomes are now leaving, going next door to hang out with the goblins. What do you want to do here?
Well, that statue did seem really ornate, so I'm going to take at least a little bit of time, particularly now that the gnomes are gone, to really examine the statue and see if there is anything special about it. I do have 2 magic users and a cleric with me, so if this is a petrified person, they might be able to determine that in some way.
They're unable to determine that. They're level 1 magic users. The statue is bolted to the floor with heavy iron bands that seem to be just woven straight into the stone beneath it.
Oh, well. And as I'm examining, I don't find any kind of secret switches anywhere?
No.
All right. Well, I won't stick around here too long, and it looks like there's no exits, so I'm going to go back up through the dining room, back into the hallway, and then I'm going to head north.
Okay, you're heading north. You come to a 3-way intersection, continuing north, going east, and back south to from whence you came.
Now, I happen to know, because I'm a naughty boy, that there is something super interesting to the west, so I'm going to go north.
All right, it goes off to the east. Your footsteps echo down the long, sodden, mildewy stone hallway. It's not even drafty. You're pretty far underground. Off you pass a door on your north side, and the passageway continues off to the east.
Well, I'll peek my head in that door.
Okay. Loading screen.
Do.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, that's my loading screen music.
All right, this room appears to be empty.
Empty, huh?
Yep. There's some stone chips on the floor. Sort of a musty animal smell in here, but not much to report.
That room is guaranteed to have some kind of secret door then, so I'm gonna look in for secret doors.
All right. 3 days later, you find no sign of secret doors.
Well, that is I go back out of the hallway and continue heading east.
The hallway zigzags a little bit, and then up ahead in the stone you can see a door set on the wall.
All right, let's pop our head through that door.
All right. Surprise! There's actually a pit trap in front of that door.
Oh, gods.
And one of you falls down. Spiraga dirties his mustache, breaks 3 fingers on his left hand, landing in the hole. I'm knocking you guys down to 49% fighting power.
Oh, dear. How deep is this pit?
10 feet.
10 feet. All right. Well, we've got a 10-foot pole, so it's easy enough to get Spiraga out.
Mm-hmm.
Is this just something that it's meant to be interesting that it happens? Because, I mean, it's unlikely to be lethal, given it's just a 10-foot pit trap.
Do you want to talk about this after we're doing the dungeoneering section? I have a lot of thoughts as well.
Right. Okay. Let's make sure we come back to this. But, yes, let's continue on forward. Can I get around the pit trap through the door?
Sure. It's trivial at this point.
Excellent. I will do that.
Okay, the door is stuck. No amount of shaking, pulling, jostling, looking for keyholes or knobs on the door seems to budge it in any way.
Well, I have Sparaga, who is a thief, so I imagine he may have lock-picking abilities.
There's not even a keyhole on the thing.
There's not even a keyhole. I would like to attempt to take the hook on my 10-foot pole and slide it maybe through the crack in the door and see if I can lift a bar on the other side, if that's possible.
Oh wait, I was completely wrong about the pit trap.
Well then.
Sorry, my correction. The pit trap is not 10 feet deep. Instead, Sparaga falls much farther than the light, the 20-foot light of your lantern. And you hear sort of a Sparaga, and then a splash below.
A splash?
Uh-huh.
Alright. I will put my light source at the end of my 10-foot pole and like lay down on the floor and hang my 10-foot pole as far down as I can to see if I can see the bottom.
Looking down, even that will not let you see the bottom. That's total of a 30-foot view distance. You still do not see the bottom, but you hear frantic splashing and shivering. The air down there is much colder.
Well, we've established that I have about 50 feet of rope, I believe.
Okay.
So I'll toss that 50 feet of rope down. And does Sparaga get it?
I'm going to ask you to roll do you have dice in front of you by any chance?
I do.
I'm going to ask you to roll a d6. On a 1, 2, 3, something bad happens.
I rolled a 6.
All right. You hear a coughing voice saying, "Pull me up!" I guess that's Sparaga. And you pull him up, and after a few seconds, you have a shivering, blue-lipped Sparaga in front of you. The water down there apparently is freezing cold.
Sparaga! Alright, so, Sparaga, having now climbed out of the hole that we thought he already climbed out of, can we now get through the door?
No. The door, you can still walk around the pit trap, but the door is still quite stuck.
Well, farts. Alright, so, I'm going to jog back to the west, and then to the south, and when I get to that three-way intersection, I am going to head east, back towards that room that I know is interesting, but I'm not supposed to know is interesting.
I don't know what you're talking about, man.
Neither do I.
This whole dungeon is fascinating. That's not true. Alright, you come to a three-way intersection where the passageway goes north, and a little bit off to the east you can see another three-way intersection, effectively giving you a four-way intersection. East, north, south, and west from whence you came.
Yeah. So a four-way intersection in the most annoying to describe means possible.
Yeah, I don't like it.
Yeah.
I'm getting itchy looking at it.
So I'll take that first northern branch.
Alright. A door is happening to you.
A door is happening. Well, I happen to the door, and that makes the door go to an open state.
Yes, you happen to the door, then the door stops occurring, and you find yourself in a long room. It's a rather austere room. The most noticeable feature is a stone carving which runs the entire 70-foot length of the room. It depicts a mighty wizard with a Z on his hat on a hilltop casting a spell in the air over a valley below with an entire army fleeing in panic from his power.
I'm sorry, were you about to say a mighty wizard?
Wizard? I don't talk good, man.
Because
why I write.
Honestly, I might stop this recording right now to go write up a wizard class. Because it sounds amazing.
Coughing, wheezing, wizard. There's a rosewood bed. Oh, go ahead.
Everyone will be annoyed that I don't reference the band because I have I know nothing about the band Weezer aside from the fact that it exists.
Something about a sweater. I don't know.
Yeah.
Which is my nickname, actually, in one circle, but that's neither here nor there. There's a rosewood bed with the name Zeligar highlighted on it in gold leaf. There's another rosewood matching nightstand beside the bed. On your left, there's a table and 3 chairs and a pitcher along with 3 pewter mugs. The nightstand has a drawer.
I mean, all of my adventuring instincts are telling me carve that gold filigree out of the or not filigree, but carve the gold out of the letters. Collect that, grab those pewter mugs, and open that drawer.
I mean, you can do all those things. The world's your oyster. Which is kind of gross. They're delicious, but kind of gross. And
I have no strong opinion on oysters.
You should. They're very easy to have strong opinions about. All right, so you peel off the filigree. No foe smites you. Zeligar's headboard is now in tatters. What else did you want to do? Grab the pewter mugs. Those are worth 15 gold, I believe.
Score! And also, open that drawer.
All right, the drawer appears to be... Let me double check. I think it's locked.
Well, I have Sparaga. Sparaga unlocks it.
All right. Sparaga fails his disarm traps check because he's level 1, and level 1 thieves are prejudiced against in early editions. A little oily pin pops out, pricks him in the thumb, and his hand just turns like a blackish hue and begins spasming uncontrollably.
Very quickly, we chop off Sparaga's hand and tourniquet his arm.
That has a 2 in 6 chance of just killing him outright. Do you want to do that?
Yeah, no. I mean, I feel like Krago, the dwarf, who really, like, being a dwarf doesn't know much about being poisoned, aside from the fact that the weaker races occasionally experience this thing called being poisoned.
That's what happens when they don't drink beer good.
Exactly. Krago is going to see this happen, and like he's been psyching himself up for this ever since he met these weakling humans. He's like, "Yep, this is the part where I cut the limb off." Boom.
All right, limbs off. Roll a d6. Don't get a 1. Don't get a 2.
All right. I got a 3. Sparaga lives.
Sparaga is pale as the grave. He's holding his own hand, which is still spasming like a dying spider, and looking at Krago the dwarf guiltily or angrily, I guess.
Krago is completely convinced that he did exactly the right thing.
This is basically human medicine. All right, but the drawer is open. Inside there you find a potion. It looks like a translucent liquid inside of a little 1 ounce vial. There's not much guidance given in the module, but the way I do potions is by tasting them.
I mean, Krago holds it up to Sparaga and says, "Maybe it's a potion of restore limb."
Maybe it's a potion of slay dwarf. I don't know. What do you want to do?
You know, it is a first edition thief, and the purpose of a first edition thief is to blindly drink potions. So Sparaga is gonna chug that thing.
All right, Sparaga turns invisible.
Excellent. Sparaga.
Even his hand is invisible somehow. It's still, you can hear it twitching on the floor, like a giant dying spider.
Sparaga really hopes that this invisibility lasts for a decent amount of time, and the party is going to continue on through the dungeon quickly in the hopes that Sparaga can use his invisibility. So they are going to go through that southern door that leads into the big squarish area.
So that room, actually, it's a long hallway. And at the end of the hallway, you can see what looks like a pile, 2 wooden chests overflowing with riches. A pile of gold pieces is arrayed around and within them. So it's like a 30-foot long hallway. At the end of the hallway is a pile of treasure.
This is the most obvious trap that ever trapped.
What do you do? They're shining so brightly you can hear them tinkle like little wind chimes.
Yeah.
Such is the luster of this gold. Your dwarf has a giant erection.
You know what? It's what we're doing. So my dwarf, with his giant erection, is going to run down and attempt to Scrooge McDuck the gold. Just Scrooge McDucking it.
All right. You come up with a bloody nose, having landed on an empty, dusty floor. The gold having vanished.
I object. Oh, okay. All right, no. If the gold vanished, that makes sense. I thought you were gonna make say that gold isn't swim-inable, and I was prepared to spend the rest of this time arguing with you about that.
No. It just vanishes with a sound like a fart.
Entirely unsurprising. My dwarf stoically sticks some linen in his bleeding nose and pretends nothing happened as he storms off to the north, back into Zelgar's bedchambers.
I mean, it could be anybody's bedchamber, really.
Are there? Am I seeing correctly? There are no other exits from that.
There's a room off to the southeast.
Let's check the room off to the southeast. I'm making sure to scratch my beard right next to the microphone so that it comes through nice and crisp in the recording.
Gross. Well, I guess that's as long as that's all you're scratching, that's okay.
No, I mean scratching my beard. That's some ASMR shit.
That's dwarven ASMR. This one appears to be a closet. It's large for a closet, but in a corner you have several bolts of cloth, moth-eaten and deteriorated. You have a few cloaks hanging from one wall. One is studded with circular bits of pewter, much like a kindergartner would make if they were in charge of designing clothing. There's also a wooden stand in the corner that has several books upon it.
Alright, well, Nikar and Glom, my two magic users, are absolutely going to dress themselves in the fanciest wizard robes that they find.
Nothing interesting happens.
Excellent. So, now decked out as if they were much more wealthy but no more stylish wizards, they are going to check out that other thing you mentioned.
Oh, the books?
Yeah, the books.
Okay. There's a historical book. Actually, these books are all pretty boring. I don't want to spend any more time in this room. You have to use read languages to read them, and they talk about weather, and they talk about a boring adventure from the ancient past, and a small amount of paper that it's worth. There's even letters by Zeligar, but nothing of those are any interest. The only thing that's interesting is that none of the letters are dated within the last 3 decades. Aside from that, it's all mundane expenses and construction work notes.
Well, how dull. Alright, so I'm going to head back south to that nightmarishly arranged 4-way intersection that we agree that we hate. And I'm going to head south through that space.
You head south through it. It gives a little zigzag and goes down to a 3-way intersection.
Well, that's just a thing.
Heading west or to the east?
Let's head east.
Okay, you head east. You come to a door on the south, a door on the north, and the passageway continues to the east.
A door to the north. Let's take that.
Okay. Heading to the door to the north, it zigzags. God, this is a lot of hallways. It zigzags another 50 feet. This one, you open that door, you go through there, you find yourself in another 40-foot hallway. That one goes west, and that door opens into a room filled with mists. On the floor are a number of round-lipped pools, some bubbling, some steaming, some full of like royals of smoke coiling up like snakes. One filled with a soft, milky gleam. All in all, there's quite a few of them. This room is enormous. You could fit many houses in this place.
Excellent. All right. Well, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 living characters. Let's see. I think we had decided that Nikar and Glom each allowed me to cast 1 spell. Is that correct?
Sure. Yeah, we agreed that.
All right. Is there any spell like detect poison or detect liquid?
Sure. You can absolutely detect poisons.
So yeah, I would like to sort of cast detect poison so that one of my casters can just sort of like maybe making like we'll sketch a quick map of the room in chalk, and one of my casters will cross out all of the poison.
Okay. There are 14 pools. They're listed by letter. They go all the way down to letter N. Using a somewhat conservative definition of poison, I'm going to say that pool number C is poisonous. I'm going to say that Pool number F is poisonous. I'm going to say that pool number J is poisonous. And I'm going to say that those are all the ones that might detect as a mundane poison.
All right. My other caster is going to cast Detect Magic.
Okay. Pool A, magical. I mean, is it magical? I mean, the material's not magical. Pool number B is filled to the brim with a clear, fizzing liquid. It smells terrible. At the bottom is a small brass key, visible through the translucent liquid. Pool number C is filled with a murky gray syrup. It's also magical. Pool number D is filled with a thick, viscous green slime, kind of curdling as you watch. Pool number E appears to be filled with cold, clear water. Pool number F is filled with a thick, deep red wine. You can smell the alcohol coming off of it. Pool G appears empty. H seems to be filled with bubbling and steaming water. Pool I is highly magical. It looks like regular water, but there is a strange shimmer to it. Pool number J is deeply magical. It's full of a greenish liquid of varying shades. Fractals emerge and disappear underneath it like fingerprints being pressed against the inside of a tent. Pool number K is filled with small fish. They're swimming in circles and mostly ignoring you. Pool number L is difficult to see, just because the sheer amount of what looks like steam coming off of it. It's cold, and it chills you as you kind of like stand near it. Pool number M looks like normal water, but at the bottom there appears to be a huge treasure, piles of gold pieces filled with sparkling jewels. Pool number N looks like regular water, but it's almost entirely depleted. Only a small handful is left at the bottom. Those are all the pools.
So, are either I or J, come...
One last thing. Pools number M and N are also magical.
Excellent. So, I or J, did either of them come up on the poison check?
J is poisonous.
All right. So, Mulgar the cleric is going to drink from pool I.
Okay. Immediately, Mulgar the cleric's whole body begins to shine with a brilliant blue light.
All right. Mulgar is now luminous. Nikar, the magic user, is going to drink from pool M.
M? The one with the treasure in the bottom?
Yes, he's going to drink from it.
You feel rich, but the feeling quickly fades. You thought you had servants, but now that you think about it, you totally don't.
Lame. Nikar is also going to try and grab the treasure from the bottom.
The treasure vanishes as soon as your hand passes through the space it occupies.
I'm shocked. Glom, the magic user, is going to attempt to drink from pool N.
N drinks from Glom drinks from the small amount of water on the floor, lapping it up like a dog because there's not much there.
That sounds like Glom, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, with a name like that, that's not a guy who eats with a spoon. And immediately Glom turns around to tell you what has happened to himself, but as he opens his mouth, nothing comes out, not even a squeak.
All right. Sparaga, let's see. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N. So, 14. 14 is what we're dealing with, right?
Yep, all the way down to N.
Alright, I know I have a D14 somewhere, but I'm just going to roll a D20 and re-roll anything above 14.
Okay.
Alright, so... Oh, I already drank from that one. Sparaga's gonna drink from H.
It looks like hot water. There's a whitish crust built up all around the edge of this pool. You still want to drink from it?
You know, Sparaga has been feeling a little congested ever since his hand got cut off. So some hot water might help clear up his, nasal passage.
All right, I'm gonna assume he drinks it gingerly and carefully,
Of course.
and avoids burning the shit out of his face. It tastes like strong mineral water, boiling hot.
I mean, bracing, really.
Yeah, his sinuses are clear, but nothing else happens to him.
Excellent. So, Mohawk is going to drink out of the first pool that isn't poisoned. So, like A or B or whatever.
The one with the strange pinkish liquid, pool A.
Yeah.
Morog immediately feels hale and hearty.
Excellent. And Krago is going to drink the wine.
Krago immediately falls down in a powerful stupor, this being much more powerful than the average wine. And as he falls on the floor, you can see him kind of like roll over to the pool and begin drinking more.
That sounds like Krago. I think that's probably where we should leave Krago, because that's really that's the best he can hope for in life, I think.
Krago begins muttering like, "My God, it's the best I've ever tasted." And he just begins like pulling huge handfuls of it into his mouth, drinking as fast as he can.
I think my party is going to retire at this point and just sell this wine in fairly small batches to make their fortune.
I mean, I like where your head is at, but I also think that most of the pools in this room lose their magic once they leave the room.
Well, I disagree.
Do you want to call it there?
That's basically where I was heading. Like,
Yeah.
we wanted to spend 30 minutes on the dungeon, 30 minutes on discussion in this one. So,
That sounds great.
We've definitely spent about 30 minutes on the dungeon at this point. We've already spent about 6 minutes on discussion, but...
Yeah, let's just move on. Thanks for not... Well, I mean, no thanks for not drinking the green slime pool. I really wanted to describe that. I always like describing green slime.
I mean, that's actually one of the first things I wanted to talk about. That pool room, despite being really interesting, is like... It's like a kid in a candy store kind of situation.
It's too big.
It's too much. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's too much
big.
for the referee to keep in their head and describe.
A lot of rooms are like that. A lot of intersections are like that too.
Yeah. And it's too much for the player to really... I mean, like, like, you described all those. I couldn't keep more than 2 or 3 of them in my head.
I have a theory that if you are a DM, you should not put more than 2, maybe 3 interesting things in a given room. If it's a room full of pools, it could be like maybe like 4 or 5 pools, you know? Maybe like assign them compass directions or put some more pools in a different room or something, but...
That's actually what I think would have been a good idea. There are so many empty, pointless rooms here. I think having this be the dungeon of pool rooms, like, just have 6 different rooms that each have 3 pools in them.
That
would have been great.
Just as a matter of pacing.
Yeah. So then the players still have to, in a sense, deal with all of them. But they only have to deal with 3 at a time, so they're more manageable.
I mean, I like the pools a lot. I've been reading different people talking about this dungeon online, and most of them mention the pool room as one of the high points. But you're right, there are a shit ton of pools.
I mean, I didn't read any of the descriptions of them, but I've seen the part of the module that describes them, and it's what, like 3 pages long? 4 pages long?
I mean, it's a page and a half.
Is it only a page?
Almost 2 pages.
Almost 2 pages. Like, I am somewhat notorious in my own mind for writing dungeon rooms that are far too long. Like, I kind of dig, like, writing these deeply intricate things. But even at my worst, I try and keep in mind that even a very intricate room has to be a bunch of moving parts that work together towards a single interesting thing. Whereas this is, I mean, these pools, correct me if I'm wrong, don't seem actually connected in any way other than the fact that they're all pools of liquid.
No, there's no story to be told there. There's no greater mechanism. They're just interesting pools.
Yeah. So there's really nothing to be lost by separating them out. And there's a lot to be gained because the referee is going to be more capable of keeping them in their head, and the player is going to be more capable of approaching them intelligently.
It just kind of comes down to like both information density for holding it in your head and like choice density for how many choices do you want to give people at one time. You know, I like that there's a lot of information here. You can learn about the pools just by looking at them or poking them with a stick. Like, you know, the green slime pool will eat your 10-foot pole. So that makes sense. I like that they're responsive puzzles. They're not just a secret door that you have a 2 in 6 chance of finding, you know.
Very
But
true.
you're right, you know.
I mean, even like I feel like that is diminished. Because I mean, maybe like I guess I could see this room working if you kind of imagine it as a bunch of sub rooms, like you know the players enter this room. There's a bunch of pools. Okay, we go investigate the first one, and then there's a back and forth between player and referee about that pool, and you kind of ignore the existence of all the other ones for a little while.
Yeah, I could have done a better job or a more intentional job just describing the pools that were within torch distance, which would have been at most 5 pools at a time, you know.
Well, I mean, and while
But
I think that would have been the best way to run it, particularly given the fact that this is an introductory adventure meant to teach people how to run the game, that doesn't seem like the best way to present the information, to assume that the referee will intuit, hey, I should treat these pools as discrete elements and only interact with one of them at a time. If you give me or you a room and say there's these many things in it, these wizards. If you say there's this many things in it, we're going to want to present all of that information to the players so that the players can make a decision. And we're experienced referees. A new referee is going to do the same thing.
mm-hmm.
At least I think so. It's entirely possible that I'm actually just a really bad referee.
I mean, never rule that out. It's always possible to suck. I don't know. Honestly, if I was a player too, the first thing I would do is I would just run in this room and I would say, DM, I want to circumambulate the whole room. Please tell me all the pools that are in here so I can start writing them down before I touch them. And it would be the same point, you know?
Yeah. I mean, and if this was a different format, I might have done something a little bit like that. I knew that we were getting a little bit close to the end of the session, so I was going a little bit quickly. But even if we'd been right at the start of this, I wouldn't have wanted to write down all the pools and experiment with them cautiously, and it's.
I've had fun making machines that have had strange effects, and players have had fun like hypothesizing, what does this machine do? We put like an apple on this end, and like a horse comes out the other. What are the rules under which this machine is operating? Which is just a more complicated version of the pool room. You know, you experiment with it, you figure out what it is.
Yeah.
But I think we at this point we've established that 14 is too goddamn many.
Yeah, it is. I think. I mean. I forget exactly what it is. It's 7 plus or minus 2. Is that the number?
I mean, I've heard that for like character creation. I mean, that's what people.
I don't think that's limited to character creation. I think, as I recall, what I read about that was that it was just like a psychological thing. Like the human brain is capable of weighing 7 plus or minus 2 options at a time.
Sure, and when it comes to like things that are in front of you that are clearly visible, like names in a book or like cereal boxes in a grocery store, but I think that if you're describing a room to players who are already like have other things in their mind and are semi-inattentive and don't know where the game is, i.e. they don't know which details are important, I think 3 is a better rule of thumb, or 2.
Oh no, I totally agree. I would not do 7 or even 5, I think. Maybe 5, but like we're humans. We primarily, at least most of us who are able-eyed, process information primarily visually, and D&D has no visual component most of the time. Certainly not for something like this. So you kind of got to scale it back.
Yeah, I'm with you. Oh, hey, let's talk about that pit trap and that door you couldn't get open. How do you feel about that?
Kind of what I started saying earlier, that I'm I'm not necessarily opposed, but I'm kind of curious what the procedure is meant to be. Like I would honestly love to see how Gygax or any of the Lake Geneva people would have run something like this. Not necessarily because I think they are like the fonts of true knowledge or anything like that, but just because I really don't know what they were trying to communicate when they put stuff like this in the game. And I would really be interested to learn.
There's no guidance for that particular pit trap you walked into, but there is guidance for a different pit trap later on in the dungeon. They mentioned that there's just a 60% chance you fall in, 30% chance the first person detects it and says, hey, there's a trap here, 10% they walk past it without any incident. So my guess is that a lot of times these pit traps were handled kind of like traps in 3.5 or 3rd edition, except minus the actual player side roll. You know, it was just a kind of a blind roll. You fall in or you notice it.
So is it maybe then meant to be just sort of something that happens to people who explore dungeons? It's not necessarily meant to be something that you can play intelligently to avoid experiencing. It's just, hey, them's the breaks. You're exploring a dungeon, sometimes you fall in a hole.
I think so. I also don't know at what point the 10-foot pole made its emergence. I'm sure someone else does, and I'm sure we can ask the internet when people started, or when there started being rules emerging for 10-foot poles. Honestly, they might be kind of fun as like a consumable. Like a 10-foot pole is basically a get out of jail free once card, then it breaks for pit traps or something. I don't know.
I mean, I feel like the fact that it only activates 60% of the time is maybe in itself a response to players using the 10-foot pole, because that seems very early D&D.
Yeah. That door you were tugging on, by the way, does not open.
Is it just straight up not a door?
It's a false door.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a hallway behind it, but that door is not a door. And if you looked closely at the map, you would have noticed it. That there's no door on the other side of that wall, but... So I mean, I don't like that very much. I mean, do you like that? I don't think I like it.
I would not say that there is no case where that could be interesting or fun, but certainly it didn't feel interesting or fun here. Particularly like, I mean, I'm a very much like all my dungeons are funhouse dungeons, but even I am like, why would someone put a door that doesn't open somewhere? Why would they do that? Like,
trolls.
Like, were Rogan and Zelgar intending this to be a dungeon that people wandered around in and got lost?
Yeah, I think so. I think nothing else makes sense. Or else there are some really, really strange, like, LARPs. I don't know.
I will say, actually, you know what? What were you going to say?
I was going to say, I don't like the door because it's a source of just frustration and confusion. And if you're playing through a dungeon, you're already going to have things that are confusing, puzzles you can't solve, and monsters you can't get past. So there's already going to be, like, obstacles in your way where you're like, well, guess I can't go that way. I don't think you need to add any more. The dungeon already has those from an organic standpoint.
Yeah.
Or it should, if it's well made. You know, there should always be points that thwart you. If you immediately trounce every objective you come across, the dungeon's just, I don't know, it's too easy. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's just a series of levers you got to pull.
No, I agree.
There should be challenges you can't get past and doors you can't open, but not because there are unopenable doors, but because the door is like an underwater tunnel, or it's because it's a key you don't, or a lock you don't have the key to yet. You know, those feel more organic and at least they're solvable.
I think a door that's barred from the opposite side is actually a really interesting obstacle. Because,
yeah, that's great. I like that.
Like, because lacking any kind of like special tools or like super special tactics, that's basically impassable. So you end up with this door that it's like, okay, there's a door here. I can't open it, but eventually maybe you get to the other side of the door. And that gives you the sense of satisfaction of like, oh, not only did I overcome this obstacle that I encountered earlier, but I've connected two parts of the dungeon together and made my movement through it more easy. That, I think, is really interesting. Having a door that's just not a door is just kind of dull. Like, it didn't stymie me or trick me. I just got bored and turned around.
Yeah. All right, great. So we both hate it equally. Can I talk about a couple more other rooms in this dungeon that I think are noteworthy?
Yeah, go for it.
There's one room, room 28, that actually is like a site of worship, and it has a big old evil idol in it, and it's the only overtly religious room in this whole dungeon. I think that's what makes lots of people, like, I've been reading that many people think that Rogan and Zelgar were evil, or at least not good. I don't know. I kind of like that as something somewhat unexpected. But again, there's a sacrificial pit in front of it, but it doesn't do anything. Nothing comes from it. So
interesting. I mean, I feel like I don't know enough about Rogan or Zelgar to care whether or not they were good or evil.
Yeah,
Like,
same.
they don't
If I rewrote this dungeon, I would fill it with barbarians who are here to reclaim the bones of their ancestor from the trophy room or something, you know?
I feel like, I mean, I don't know if this was mentioned earlier. I feel like I learned this session that Zelgar was apparently a wizard. Felt like news to me.
That should have been in the clues. I probably did a bad job of that. A different thing I think I did a bad job of was communicating to you that at the bottom of the pit trap is a whole floor. You know, there's a whole room down there. There's no smooth walls leading down, or if there are, they open up into a natural cavern.
Oh, I did see that there was a second map. Is that what that is?
Yeah, it's a second floor down there.
All right, that's pretty interesting. I like trapdoors that lead to other parts of the dungeon. That's good stuff.
Yeah, me too. It's actually great. I wish I remembered to do that more often in the dungeons I made, especially if like the trapdoor closes automatically or something, but not for a long period of time. Another thing I think is cool is that a different way to get down to the second floor. There's a 3-foot wide hole in a room, and it's like a 40-foot fall down to the second floor, and on the wall is a small ring, and the ring is rusty, and if you attach a rope to it, there's a chance of breaking if you use the ring to lower your characters down. But there's also some 4-foot logs in the room, sort of with the implication that it's better to tie the rope to a log and use that to lower yourself down, just bridge that 3-foot gap.
That feels
so
like
that.
Some Sierra shit, like some King's Quest. Like, here's the obvious solution.
Oh yeah.
It'll kill you. The moon logic solution will save you, and not that the 4-foot logs are moon logic, but
I mean, it's as smart as like, hey, yank on this little ring bolt before you like put your weight on it. That kind of falls under common sense, so I kind of like that.
Yeah.
I think that's good.
I don't know how much of it was you as a referee and a creative person making it interesting, but for sure, for me, I think the most interesting areas in this entire dungeon were areas 2, 3, and 4, which kind of amusingly, just like from straight up description, are the most boring. The kitchen, the dining room, and the room that just has a statue in it.
I stocked it with goblins and gnomes, but I have a hard time having goblins just be goblins sitting in a dark room, holding hands, waiting for you to show up. And likewise, I don't know, that the details were me. I try to give them stuff to do.
So I guess the thing that was interesting was just you being an interesting referee, not the dungeon actually being good. That's disappointing. I actually was gonna give the dungeon quite a bit of credit for those rooms.
No, the dungeon as written gives you absolutely no guidance for what the humanoids are doing when they show up in rooms or with random encounters, and that's not just in this module, but a shit ton of old modules don't spend enough time. One of the biggest things I dislike about old modules is they don't spend enough time thinking about what are the humanoids doing, what do they care about, you know, what scene are you walking across. They talk about rivalries between tribes of bugbears versus orcs, but not much of the day-to-day, you know, like, are they playing cards, you know, are they having a farting contest, are they torturing some dude.
That's disappointing. I mean, I guess at the very least we can say that I think at least there's a scene that has gotten quite a bit better than that has gotten quite a bit better at that.
I mean, if you think about it, most of the games I've played, my players spend tons of time talking to goblins and building them houses for no reason at all, and interacting with NPCs because that's hecka fun.
Yeah.
And I feel like a big part of the game is right there with talking to NPCs and role playing, even if it's kind of like cheeky, not quite serious role playing. That's a big part of the game. But if you look at a module, all you see are doors and walls and rooms and traps and treasure, and there's none of that really mentioned. So
I've been doing this thing lately, where I've been. I say lately. I've actually been working on it for years, but I've only really been digging into it lately. I've been trying to. I describe the dungeon room in its broad strokes in a single line of text. And I restrict myself to, like, if I hit a line break, then it's too long and I've got to go back through and figure out how to make it shorter. And then I have, like, if the room has, like, NPCs in it, I will, like, have a second line for the NPCs. And if it has a trap in it, I'll have a second line for the trap. But every, like, there's one line for the room in broad strokes, and then each really interesting knob for the players to turn gets one extra line. And often when it comes to often these are rewrites of something that was maybe a paragraph long. And then I get so when I'm rewriting it, I do my line for the broad strokes of the room, and then I get to the line for describing the creatures. And often it starts out with something as simple as, like, there's 32 goopies in this room. And then
What's a goopy?
A goopy is a slimy amphibious creature that has a second set of ears instead of eyes.
That makes sense.
Yeah. But then that gives me this sort of interesting writing prompt where instead of taking a line that's too long and making it shorter, I'm stuck with this, like, well, like, this looks weird. This line just says 32 of creature, and it forces me to kind of go through and say, like, what are they doing? What's up with them? And I think that's actually made my dungeon writing quite a bit better of late, of forcing myself to separate the inhabitants of an area into a line and then fill out that line with more than just what and how many.
I mean, hopefully disposition and reaction is something you can bake into an encounter like that. I've had a lot of success, I think. I mean, reaction rolls are great. It's good to have randomly decided encounters and randomly rolled reactions, but it's also, I think it's good just to have encounters that these goblins are in a great mood. They're all drunk. These gnomes are in a terrible mood. The statue's not waking up, you know, and then you actually have what is probably the more interesting roll on potential. Out of the potential rolls, you pick the most interesting one, hopefully plop that one down. I think you have a little better luck with that, with the pre-scripted encounters than regular ones. But yeah, no, there's absolutely a lot of detail and heart to be given dungeons through that vein, you know.
Those gnomes were great, by the way. I would legitimately love to have been able to play more and find out how the interaction of playing the gnomes off of the goblins wound out.
I was gonna roll dice to see if they end up fighting or, like, hugging.
Was that an intentional, like, thing
you
put in there?
That was entirely ad hoc. The dress was improv, and the gnomes were there, but I couldn't figure what else they were there for, so I figured they were there to kiss a stone lady. But you pointed it out, and now I'm wondering if I'm just feeling extra misogynist today. God, I hope not.
It's one of those tricky things, I find, that because the nature of D&D is so fast-paced with, you know, you like, you throw an empty room at the players, and then you have to populate it really quick at the table. And, like, whatever comes out of your mouth, as soon as it comes out of your mouth, it's like, that has to be canon now because the players have heard it, and now I have to build off of it.
It's a Rorschach test. If your DM has a urine fetish, you're going to learn about it by session 4.
It's true. No, it's true. And it kind of makes it particularly difficult to weed out all of the various junk that's in your brain and be like, oh, hey, this is maybe something that is not super great about myself that I keep putting out there for people, and I need to figure out how to how to not do that.
True. All right, I got one more thing I want to talk about just to reel it back into the dungeon a little bit.
Yes.
There's one last potentially interesting room that I like. It's a pair of identical rooms, and they have a crystal formation in the back wall. Excuse me. And when the party walks into the room, it teleports them to the other identical room. And so then when they leave the second room, it confounds their map making because they thought they were in the same room. They don't know they've been teleported, and they just find out that they are the map's all wrong.
That sounds like a very typical early D&D trick that that would be fun if making maps is a challenge that you're interested in.
If that's part of the game you want to play.
Yeah, it's one of those things that feels like an evolutionary dead end.
Yeah, I don't think it's fun. I don't think I could have fun in a game where they throw mapping challenges like that at me, you know?
Yeah.
I don't want to play a mapping simulator.
I
want mapping to be over quickly.
Yeah. I'm in the same boat. I can respect it, though. Like, I can see how it's an interesting challenge, and that they came up with some really interesting ways to play with players' expectations when it came to mapping. And I imagine that in the Lake Geneva scene, there has to have been a bunch of people who really thought mapping was an interesting challenge, and I'm sure they had a ton of fun with it, and it just didn't end up resonating with basically anyone I know who ended up being interested in the hobby. Very similar to, like, the miniatures. Like, miniatures were a super essential part of the Lake Geneva scene, and they've certainly remained more present in the modern D&D scene, but I mean, no one I know actually plays with them.
I used to, but not anymore.
Yeah. It's like...
Yeah. Anyway, I mean, I guess I should play a game where mapping is fun and challenging and intricate, and there's all kinds of confounding methods there before I prejudge it, but I don't know. It doesn't sound fun to me.
It doesn't sound fun to me either, don't get me wrong.
All right, here's a question. How about all the fake treasure? How do you feel about that?
I mean, it was incredibly predictable, but it was incredibly predictable because I'm playing this in the year of our Lord 2019, not 1978, and I'm also not 10 years old. So,
yeah, it's true. The things that are interesting to 10-year-olds tend to be very cliche. The stuff I liked when I was 10 is tremendously cliche by current Arnold standards.
Yeah. I don't hate it. It didn't really punish you. I appreciate that. Like, there are dungeons where the trick treasure kills you, or
mimic.
Yeah, or fucking gold, like yellow mold that looks exactly and glints like gold. Ooh, that's annoying.
That is pretty annoying.
It also didn't it disappeared as soon as I touched it, rather than like filling up my bags and disappearing only when I got back to town.
Yeah. So there were a lot of fake outs and trollish maneuvers, but they generally weren't too punishing, with a couple exceptions like that. The fall into the icy water could have killed you. There is a chance you drown there, or just fail to breathe with the cold water.
Yeah. That remains a point of, I don't want to say contention with the design, but I don't get it and wouldn't design anything that way. Hallways are not interesting.
I mean, you can make them interesting, but not these ones.
I don't know if you can make them interesting. I mean, that's immediately obviously false as soon as it comes out of my mouth.
Yeah.
You can make anything interesting. In my mind, like, the whole purpose of a dungeon is to have a contained space where it's like, okay, you have a limited amount of choices. You can go to this interesting space that's a self-contained thing, or that interesting space that's a self-contained thing, and the hallways exist just to connect them.
Yeah, I don't think much game takes place in the hallways, at least the way I do when I design dungeons.
I don't want to key my hallways, is basically what I'm saying. Like, that sounds awful.
No, it's fine. I mean, you can put interesting things in hallways, but is there any reason why you can't also just put them in the rooms? I mean, it could just be sort of a genre expectation, but maybe you want to subvert that sometimes. I don't know.
Again,
you can put things in hallways.
What I've taken to doing is that at the start of a dungeon, I'll say, hey, this is the general construction of a dungeon. So then the referee can kind of intuit, if this is the general construction, then these are the sorts of things players will find in hallways and the sorts of knobs that they'll be able to turn. But if I'm going to key something, I'd rather put it in a room, because otherwise it's kind of a pain.
Yeah, I also I'm also a fan of kind of boring dungeon maps. I've definitely made dungeons that's just almost a grid of 20 by 20 rooms, and had a lot of fun with them because they're easy to map. You can just tell the players where you are, you know.
I mean, I'm not an artist, so what I look for in making a dungeon, what I look for in an interesting dungeon is very different from what an artist or a cartographer would find interesting. But yeah, a simple shape gives you just as good a canvas on which to write interesting room descriptions as this weird curly Q hallway and the triangle secret room and the...
Yeah. I mean, that's true. I mean, the triangle shaped room is not going to make your imagination any more vivid. Plus, I also think there is something of a historic precedent. From what I understand, a lot of the old palaces of older Europe used to not be big on hallways, and you'd be passing through intermediary rooms on your way to the king's bedchamber, or I don't know, the garden or whatever. You pass through bedrooms and nurseries and libraries and whatever they had, drawing rooms.
Yeah, hallways are a waste. They're
kind of, yeah. Anyway, high five. I think we did great.
I think this episode was a significant improvement on the previous one.
Yeah, I have a better idea what I wanted to do.
Yeah. I liked this more. I think having the visual of the map in front of me helped. I think that moving the discussion to the end, I didn't think that was going to, when you first brought it up at the beginning of this episode, I thought that it was going to be detrimental to the format, but I think I was completely wrong. I think it was a significant improvement.
I think it helps.
Yeah. What I was worried about is that we would forget about things that were worth talking about, but I think what happened instead was that we had time to reflect on the things that were interesting to talk about.
Yeah. It also makes it easier to budget your time.
Yes.
Anyway, I think we're at the end of this section. Do you want to talk on mic what we want to do next?
On mic off recording, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, you want the mic off or on?
Let's do an outro. We didn't do an outro last time. You just said cue the music, and should we say something at the end of the podcast?
Shit, what did we say? We should have rehearsed this.
We probably should have. I mean, of course, now us going back and forth, ooh, what should we say? That's
go die in a hole. I mean, it's the name of the thing.
That's true.
Good luck and go die in a hole.
Yeah, that sounds super cheesy. All right, all you listeners out there in podcast land, good luck in your own dungeon delves and go die in a hole.
Roll mediocre? I don't know. What do you want, a slogan?
That is, I do hate roll may your rolls always be high jokes. So
I hate catchphrases as a general rule.
Yeah.
Or just the old grumpy fuck off. Bye.
That would be it. Yeah. Every episode ends with fuck off.
I kind of like it.
Yeah. All right. We can stop the recording.
All right. Fuck off.